Young-yun pouted in frustration, clearly struggling to accept his defeat. Meanwhile, Dr. Chang-hyo, observing his dismay, smirked faintly and told him he should consider himself fortunate. Meeting Jae-hwan now, before facing true despair, might be the best thing that's ever happened to you, the doctor remarked. Jae-hwan, oblivious to their exchange, was focused on the last remaining statue of Inspector Carlton, preparing to use it for his training. Young-yun, however, couldn't suppress the peculiar expression on his face as he watched the castle lord. Sensing the confusion, Dr. Chang-hyo chuckled softly and asked, "Are you wondering what makes him so special?" Without waiting for a response, the doctor began to explain. Just a week before you arrived, Gorgon was on the brink of falling to the Golden Sky Clan. Young-yun's eyes widened in shock. The Golden Sky Clan? He echoed, astonished. Chang-hyo nodded grimly. It seems they had been planning this for years. Their influence within Gorgon ran deep, too deep. They almost succeeded in taking over. He paused, allowing the gravity of the situation to sink in. But do you know who stopped them? Chang-hyo continued, his voice lowering. It was that kid. Not only did he save Gorgon from collapse, but he also managed to stop the lone king of chaos when that monster possessed the previous castle lord. That's why he's the castle lord now. Young-yun was stunned into silence. Why didn't you tell me this earlier? He demanded after a moment. Chang-hyo's lips curled into a wry grin. Well, perhaps because you burst in here, trying to assassinate him before we could even talk? So don't blame me for your ignorance. Their conversation was abruptly interrupted as the room grew tense. Huang Kong, the formidable lord of the Fire King clan, entered, exuding fiery confidence. His entrance was anything but subtle, and his booming voice echoed in the hall. I've come to challenge the castle lord to a duel, Huang Kong declared, his eyes gleaming with anticipation. Beside him stood the lord of the South Sea clan, who nodded in agreement, adding, I'll take him on if you don't mind going second. Jae-hwan, who had been paying little attention, finally turned toward them. His response was as calm as it was shocking. No need to wait your turns, he said flatly. You can both fight me at once. I'm training right now, so let's not waste an entire day. The audacity of his words left the two clan leaders momentarily speechless. Then Huang Kong burst into laughter. You'll regret saying that, he roared as flames began to swirl around him. Without hesitation, Huang Kong launched an attack, channeling his signature flame technique. But Jae-hwan sidestepped the fiery onslaught with ease, his movements almost casual. Before Huang Kong could react, Jae-hwan retaliated with a precise strike, slamming him against the far wall. The room fell silent for a moment, the air thick with tension. Chang-hyo, watching from the sidelines, shook his head with a bemused expression. Looks like a few people are going home disappointed today, he muttered under his breath. Chang-hyo's voice boomed with frustration as he turned toward Huang Kong. Are you trying to burn down the entire training ground? He snapped. But Huang Kong, consumed by the heat of battle, seemed oblivious to the scolding. Young-yun glanced at him and muttered, he's so worked up, he probably didn't hear a word. Unfazed by the chaos, Huang Kong charged at Jae-hwan, his sword blazing with fierce flames. Do you fear the wrath of my sword flame? He bellowed, his fiery aura intensifying. Jae-hwan, however, remained unperturbed. Afraid? Not in the slightest, he replied with a calm voice, raising his fist. In a bold move, he struck Huang Kang's flaming sword barehanded, sending shockwaves through the air. But tell me later, Jae-hwan added, his tone casual, if you're afraid of my stab. The moment Jae-hwan's sword connected with the blade, a resounding impact echoed through the hall. The sheer force of his strike left a gaping hole in the wall behind them. Stretching his arm, Jae-hwan frowned slightly. Still struggling to control my power, he muttered to himself. Young-yun stood frozen, his jaw practically hitting the floor at the spectacle. Chang-hyo, on the other hand, was already dreading the inevitable fallout. How am I supposed to explain this to Jurgen? He groaned, rubbing his temples. Amidst the commotion, Jae-hwan's next opponent, the lord of the South Sea clan, stepped forward. His sword clanged against the ground as he assumed a ready stance. Huang Kong will recover soon enough, he said in a calm, even tone. Jae-hwan turned to him, tilting his head. Why didn't you attack me earlier? I told you both to come at me together. The water-clad warrior shook his head. I couldn't stand the heat, he replied, his body emanating a serene, aquatic aura. Lifting his sword, he added with quiet determination, but now, it's my turn to fight the castle lord. Jae-hwan's eyes narrowed, intrigued. He couldn't help but marvel at the elemental diversity of his opponents, first electricity, then fire, and now water. The sequence amused him, reminding him of a game he once played. Still, this new challenger seemed different, more composed. As the water warrior gestured for him to prepare, Jae-hwan wasted no time and charged forward with blinding speed. Their swords clashed, sending sparks and droplets flying. But with a deft movement, the man redirected Jaehwan's attack, disarming him with a decisive strike that sent his weapon clattering. Jaehwan took a step back, genuinely surprised. This opponent didn't radiate desperation or aggression like the others. Instead, there was a calm precision in his every move, an air of quiet confidence that set him apart. For the first time in this chaotic day, Jaehwan felt the stirrings of genuine respect. Cayman unleashed his strongest blow, his sword cutting through the air with fierce intent. But his opponent, the castle lord, had already vanished from the line of attack. The blade struck the ground with a deafening impact, leaving Cayman startled. Glancing upward, he found Jaehwan poised above him, fully prepared to counter with precision and force. Before Cayman could properly react, Jaehwan launched his attack. Cayman tried to block but miscalculated the sheer speed and power of the strike, forcing him to retreat hurriedly. Breathing heavily, he let out a relieved sigh. If I hadn't dodged in time, he thought, I might have ended up like Huang Kong. Accepting his situation, Cayman raised his hand in surrender. I yield, he declared, stepping back with a calm demeanor. Jaehwan frowned slightly, surprised by the abrupt concession. But I haven't even seen the full extent of your skills, he remarked, genuinely puzzled. Cayman chuckled softly. Sometimes, you don't need to see the entire fight to know how it'll end, he said, a hint of wisdom in his voice. I lost this one. With his defeat acknowledged, Cayman shifted the conversation. Now that that's settled, why don't you tell me more about this abyss expedition? Meanwhile, Huang Kong stirred, regaining consciousness. Realizing what had happened, his face twisted with anger. News of his defeat had already begun to circulate, thanks to Young Yun, who wasted no time spreading the rumor that Huang Kong had been barely bested by the castle lord. Young Yun. Huang Kong roared, glaring at him. You had no right to tarnish my name like that. Chang Hyo intervened, his voice firm yet calm. Don't blame Young Yun, he said. The fault lies with you. You lost the duel because you weren't strong enough to defeat the castle lord. Face the truth? Huang Kong gritted his teeth, his frustration boiling over, but deep down, he couldn't argue against Chang Hyo's blunt assessment. Young Yun, always quick with a quip, leaned back and grinned. So, what are you two planning to do now? He asked smugly. Since you've both lost, it seems the only logical next step is to join the Abyss expedition with the castle lord. The mention of the expedition turned Huang Kang's anger toward Jaehwan, who was calmly cleaning his sword, seemingly oblivious to the rising tension. I came here intending to join the Abyss expedition, Huang Kong admitted, his tone begrudging but resolute. Jaehwan's eyes flickered with interest as he glanced at Cayman. What about you? Do you mean what you said earlier? Cayman nodded firmly. I do, he confirmed. Huang Kong rolled his eyes, though he wasn't entirely surprised. That's just like you, he muttered, shaking his head. You've always been this way. Cayman's expression softened, and his thoughts drifted to the past. I've seen what happens when hope is lost, he said quietly. Amal, Gorgon's former castle lord, was a close friend of mine. Back then, I wasn't strong enough to join the Abyss expedition. I watched as they lost everything, their lives, their dreams, and the hope they carried. I won't let that happen again. Jaehwan listened in silence, his gaze steady. He could sense the determination in Cayman's words. Then let's see what you're truly capable of, he finally said, sheathing his sword with finality. The Abyss expedition loomed ahead, and the stakes had never been higher. Cayman's gaze was distant, as though he could see the past vividly playing out before him. I witnessed the end of the Abyss expedition, he murmured, his voice heavy with nostalgia. That was 900 years ago, yet it feels like every moment since has been leading to this day. Chang Hyo's brows furrowed with concern as he listened. His worry only deepened when Cayman added, almost nonchalantly, I've decided to go to the Abyss. No matter the condition, I'll be joining the Abyss expedition too. Chang Hyo, startled, clutched his head in disbelief. You're serious about this? He asked, his tone wavering. Turning to Huang Kong, he sought some reassurance. Fire King, what's your opinion on this madness? Huang Kong merely shrugged, a resigned look on his face. Do I have a choice? He replied bitterly. I lost the duel. I suppose I'm bound to follow. Still unsatisfied, Chang Hyo shifted his focus to Young Yun. And you, Lord of Thunder? What do you think about all this? Young Yun's expression was unreadable, but his answer came swiftly. I've made up my mind. Without warning, he bolted toward Jaehwan. Startled by his sudden movement, the others watched in shock. Chang Hyo's alarmed voice rang out, Young Yun. Are you planning to attack him again? But Young Yun's intentions became clear as he stopped abruptly before Jaehwan. Instead of striking, he dropped to his knees, bowing deeply. Lord Jaehwan, he said solemnly, his voice filled with conviction. The unexpected declaration stunned everyone. Young Yun raised his head, meeting Jaehwan's bewildered gaze. From this moment forward, I, Young Yun, Lord of the Thunder God clan, swear absolute loyalty to you as the Castle Lord of Gorgon. I offer you my fealty, unwavering and eternal. Jae-hwan blinked, visibly taken aback. That's unnecessary, he said, his tone tinged with discomfort. You don't need to swear loyalty to me. But Young Yun's resolve was unshakable. It is my choice, he replied firmly. Even if you don't ask for it, my loyalty will remain steadfast. I will serve you faithfully, even beyond death. The room fell into a stunned silence as Young Yun's declaration echoed. Jae-hwan could only look at him, both perplexed and contemplative, as the weight of the Thunder God's promise settled over the hall. Jae-hwan stood in silence, utterly speechless. Young Yun's declaration hung in the air, but something about it struck a heavy chord. The truth was undeniable, Young Yun was already dead, a fact that made Jae-hwan's expression grow somber. Despite the protagonist's silence, Young Yun pressed on, his tone becoming more desperate. Please, Castle Lord, allow me to join your family, he implored, his voice wavering. You could even make me your captain if you see fit? Chang Hyo's brows shot up at the sudden request. Family? What family are you talking about? Young Yun's resolve didn't falter. Tears streamed down his face as he cried, I swear I won't steal anymore. Just give me this chance. He paused, then added with a tinge of guilt, I promise, no more skill tomes, unlike before when I took the divine thunderstrike from the Yuan family. Chang Hyo, still puzzled, interjected, but aren't you the lord of the Thunder God clan? What about your clan? How does this fit into your loyalty to them? At this, Young Yun's face darkened. His voice shook with suppressed anger as he spat, the Thunder God clan no longer exists in chaos. The weight of his words hit hard. Chang Hyo's confusion deepened. What do you mean, no longer exists? What happened? Young Yun's shoulders slumped as he explained, his voice tinged with sorrow. Only 7 members of the clan are left. Including me. Jae-hwan's eyes widened. Your clan, it's gone? Young Yun nodded grimly. Destroyed. Just a week ago? Chang Hyo staggered back as the realization set in. The Thunder God clan, wiped out, he repeated, searching Young Yun's face for any hint of doubt. Young Yun confirmed it with a solemn nod. It happened just as I said, a week ago. The old man pieced the story together aloud. So, your clan was destroyed, and then Gorgon Fortress announced the contest to determine the new castle lord. You figured you had nothing to lose and came here, hoping to win the position yourself. And when you failed against Jae-hwan? Yes, Young Yun interrupted, his voice raw. I have nowhere else to go now. That's why I'm asking to join you. Chang Hyo blinked, taken aback by Young Yun's blunt admission. So that's it, he asked, astonished. You lose your clan, you lose the duel, and now you're here asking to be accepted without a shred of shame? Young Yun's head dipped low, but his voice remained steady. That's exactly it. I have nothing left but my resolve, and I offer it to the castle lord. Jae-hwan stared at Young Yun, torn between disbelief and curiosity, as Chang Hyo shook his head in exasperation at the man's audacity. The situation was perplexing. If the Thunder God clan had indeed been annihilated a week ago, word should have already reached them. Kamen frowned and muttered, even considering the distance between Manticore and Gorgon, this doesn't add up. News like this should have traveled by now. Young Yun broke the silence, turning to Chang Hyo. Did you say earlier that the castle lord saved Gorgon? Chang Hyo nodded. Yes, that's what I said. This kid is the one who drove the Golden Sky clan out of Gorgon. Chang Hyo's eyes widened as something clicked in his mind. Huang Kong and Kamen shared his shock as the weight of the situation began to settle on them. Wait, Huang Kong interjected. Are you saying the Golden Sky clan was responsible for the chaos in the inner castle last week? Chang Hyo hesitated, then nodded. It does make sense. If they were behind that, they might also be the ones who destroyed the Thunder God clan. Young Yun confirmed their suspicions, his tone grim. Yes. And it wasn't just us. The Golden Sky clan also crushed the Black Forest clan, ranked 3rd, and the Heavenly Dragon clan, ranked 1st. Huang Kong and Kamen exchanged stunned glances, their disbelief evident. Chang Hyo, however, quickly focused on the implications. If they managed to destroy those clans, then, what about Manticore Fortress? Young Yun's expression darkened. A week ago, Manticore Fortress fell entirely under the Golden Sky clan's control. Chang Hyo's face tightened as the pieces fell into place. That explains it, he murmured. The only way they could keep something like this quiet for a week is by controlling the flow of information at its source. That means, they've seized the skill system, Young Yun concluded grimly. After capturing Manticore Fortress, they must have blocked all messaging skills to ensure no news got out. Huang Kong groaned, clutching his head. Hold on. You're telling me that the 10th-ranked Golden Sky clan destroyed 3 of the top 10 clans in chaos, in a single night? Young Yun nodded firmly. That's exactly what happened. The room fell silent, the weight of Young Yun's words pressing on everyone. The sheer audacity and precision of the Golden Sky Clan's actions left them all in shock, with only one question lingering: what would they do next? Cayman had heard whispers about the Golden Sky Clan's growing strength over the years, but he never imagined they had become powerful enough to conquer all of Manticore so swiftly. In just a few years, he muttered in disbelief, they've managed to achieve this. The protagonist, Jae-hwan, broke the tense silence with a calm yet chilling observation. The lower the number, the stronger the clan. His statement sent ripples of shock through the group. Yongyun blinked, seemingly struck by realization. He stared at Jae-hwan and muttered, "You're the castle lord. You just realized that?" This remark kindled a burning fury within Jae-hwan. His killing intent surged, filling the air like an ominous shadow. His cold voice cut through the tension. "What do you mean by that?" The overwhelming aura sent shivers down everyone's spines. Yongyun began trembling uncontrollably, stammering as he tried to explain himself. I didn't mean anything disrespectful, Lord Jae-hwan. Please, spare me." Jae-hwan's gaze lingered on him for a moment before he withdrew his killing intent. He nodded faintly, signaling that he wouldn't kill him. Yongyun sighed in relief, visibly shaken but grateful to still be alive. Chang-hyo wiped his brow and whispered, "He's lucky Lord Jae-hwan decided to spare him." The conversation shifted as they delved into the broader implications of the Golden Sky Clan's rise. Chaos was divided among 4 great fortresses, Gorgon, Manticore, Dryad, and Garuda, and 10 ruling factions, collectively known as the 10 Clans of Chaos. However, their strength varied greatly. The lower-ranked clans couldn't hope to compete with the top 3. Yet, recent events had upended the balance. The 9th-ranked Thunder God clan, the 3rd-ranked Black Forest clan, and even the 1st-ranked Heavenly Dragon clan had all fallen to the Golden Sky clan, the lowest-ranked among the 10. Moreover, Manticore Fortress, a symbol of power, had also fallen into their hands. Yongyun voiced his suspicions, suggesting that the Golden Sky clan wasn't acting alone. There must be someone supporting them from the shadows, he said grimly. Jae-hwan remained silent, lost in thought. His mind wandered to his first encounter with a Golden Sky clan operative in a dimly lit pub. Back then, he overheard a name that caught his attention, the Dream Demon. He had always suspected the Golden Sky clan was connected to the creature. Their recent conquests only deepened his suspicions. If they're after the fortresses, they might share the same goal as me, he thought. He recalled the chilling words of the Golden Sky clan member when asked about the Dream Demon. "Even if I told you, it wouldn't matter," the man had said. "Because if that person finds out, you'll wish you were dead." Meanwhile, far away in the Golden Sky clan's fortress, their lord stood over a decapitated foe, his expression cold and merciless. "Report," he commanded. One of his subordinates stepped forward, his voice trembling. "My lord, we have failed to secure the guardian horned beast." The clan lord's eyes narrowed, his frustration evident. "Failure is not an option," he growled, his tone dripping with menace. "Find it. No matter what it takes." The leader of the Golden Sky clan, Jin Hong Lim, leaned back with a calm yet sinister expression, addressing his subordinates with a tone of satisfaction as he surveyed the severed remains of their enemies. His men reported that they had successfully dismembered the lord of the Heavenly Dragon clan and imprisoned him, while the lord of the Black Forest clan was still resisting but would soon fall. Jin Hong Lim twirled a dagger effortlessly around his fingers before launching it into the skull of a nearby captive with chilling precision. He then picked up an apple, took a deliberate bite, and praised his subordinates for their efficiency. However, his expression darkened when he inquired about the capture of the Thunder God clan's leader and was met with the admission that the mission was incomplete. Irritated, Jin Hong Lim hurled the dagger again, this time striking the shoulder of the messenger. The injured subordinate fell to his knees, trembling and stammering an apology, but Jin Hong Lim's patience was wearing thin. He turned his attention to another subordinate, demanding to know where the Thunder God clan's leader had fled. The second man cautiously explained that they had traced his movements to Gorgon. Jin Hong Lim's eyebrows furrowed as disbelief spread across his face. "Gorgon? Of all places," he muttered, recalling that the fortress had recently held a contest to appoint a new castle lord and organize an abyss expedition. "Fools clinging to relics of a bygone era," he sneered, shaking his head. Despite his disdain, he couldn't ignore the implications of Gorgon's defiance, especially after their forces, led by Elder Mai-han, had failed to take the fortress. The failure had been a source of personal embarrassment for Jin Hong Lim, particularly since it meant facing the wrath of the Master of Darkness. With a sharp motion, he summoned a projection screen, which displayed a recording of Jae-hwan decisively defeating the Golden Sky clan's forces. Jin Hong Lim's lips curled into a grim smile as he studied the video. He turned to his men, his voice low and menacing, What is the name of this castle, lord? One of his subordinates hesitantly replied, Jae-hwan, my lord. Jin Hong Lim's eyes narrowed as he repeated the name with venom. Jae-hwan, so this is the one daring to stand against us? His tone carried an ominous promise of vengeance, leaving his subordinates uneasy in the suffocating tension of the room. Jin Hong Lim leaned forward on his throne, narrowing his eyes as he scrutinized the image of Jae-hwan displayed on the screen. Something about the face seemed vaguely familiar, but before he could place it, a notification interrupted his thoughts. His brow furrowed in irritation as a subordinate approached to inform him it was a message from the Master of Darkness. Again with that nonsense, Jin Hong muttered under his breath, already anticipating the request. He guessed it would be about the so-called product that had escaped from the tower. A sneer twisted his lips as he cursed the Master of Darkness for their incompetence in losing it in the first place. Why are they asking us to clean up their mess? He growled. He gestured impatiently for his man to respond that the Golden Sky Clan would continue the search, earning a quick nod of acknowledgement. Leaning back in his seat, Jin Hong began tapping his fingers rhythmically against the armrest of his throne. His thoughts lingered on the situation, and the more he considered it, the more it gnawed at him. It doesn't add up, he muttered aloud, drawing the attention of his men. That so-called product was just a thing, a mere tool. Yet somehow, it managed to kill one of the tower's cultivators during the tutorial game? Ridiculous. The subordinate he had injured earlier swayed unsteadily, his face pale and sweat dripping from his brow as blood pooled around him. His comrades cast sympathetic glances but dared not speak out. Jin Hong noticed the man's feeble state and burst into laughter, the absurdity of the situation fueling his amusement. The idea of that product destroying the tower and escaping to chaos? Preposterous. Without warning, Jin Hong flicked his wrist and drove a dagger through the injured man's skull, silencing him instantly. The others flinched but remained silent, their faces betraying a mix of fear and resignation. As the life drained from the unfortunate subordinate, the screen displaying Jae-hwan's image flickered and disappeared. Turning to another subordinate, Jin Hong posed a question. Does it make any sense to you? That a simple product could manage all that? The man shook his head vehemently. No, my lord. It's impossible. Such a thing could never happen. Satisfied with the response, Jin Hong dismissed the thought and moved on. What about the Thunder God clan's leader? He's still in Gorgon, isn't he? The subordinate hesitated before replying. Yes, my lord. What are your orders? Jin Hong yawned, suddenly feeling the weight of the day's events. Let him go, he said dismissively, waving his hand. His men exchanged startled glances, one finally daring to voice concern. But, my lord, with the news of a new castle lord holding a competition, we've heard that the leaders of the 10 clans are converging on Gorgon. Letting him go might complicate matters. Jin Hong's lips curled into a cold smirk. Let them gather, he said with a chilling tone. If we are to unite chaos under our rule, those leaders would have to be eliminated eventually. This competition saves us the trouble of seeking them out. Besides, he added, his eyes glinting with cruel amusement, the undead will soon overrun Gorgon. Let's see how long their so-called castle lord lasts. With that, Jin Hong rose, stretching lazily as if the matter no longer concerned him. For him, the pieces were already moving, and it was only a matter of time before the Golden Sky Clan's dominance was complete. A week ago, a surge of immensely potent undead energy erupted from Gorgon Fortress, shaking the very core of chaos. This terrifying presence was unmistakable, it could only belong to Catastrophe, the lone king of chaos. However, as quickly as it had appeared, the energy vanished, leaving an eerie silence in its wake. Yet, those familiar with Catastrophe knew the most frightening aspect of his power wasn't his physical incarnation. His ability to summon legions of undead was what truly earned him his dreaded reputation. The sinister energy would undoubtedly have drawn countless other undead creatures to Gorgon, and Jin Hong Lim couldn't help but smirk wickedly at the thought. Soon, Gorgon would understand the true meaning behind Catastrophe's name. Meanwhile, back at Gorgon Castle, speculation was rife about the Golden Sky Clan's sudden rise. The idea that the clan was being backed by a powerful entity gained traction. Young Yun suggested the possibility of someone from the Great Realm's 12 zones supporting them. However, not everyone agreed. Some dismissed the idea, arguing that the masters of the 12 zones had pledged not to interfere with chaos. Then who else could provide such overwhelming support to one of chaos's 10 clans? Young Yun pressed. Huang Kong furrowed his brow in thought, considering the Great Realm's current state of turmoil. With war raging across the zones, he reasoned that someone might be exploiting the chaos to meddle in their affairs. The suggestion to contact the Regeneration Palace startled Cayman, who quickly voiced his concerns. You mean that Regeneration Palace? He asked, disbelief evident in his tone. The place where the masters of the Great Realm and the lords of the 5 families are revived? The very group that manages all of Chaos's fruits? Ching Hyo nodded grimly. Yes, that one. If the Regeneration Palace is involved, they've clearly violated the agreement to stay out of chaos. Kamen looked uneasy as he considered the implications. But if they've stolen all the fruits and one of the 12 zones is involved, why would they risk breaking the pact? It doesn't make sense. Huang Kong clenched his fists in frustration. Regardless, we should demand an explanation from them. Kaiman shook his head in disapproval. That's reckless. We have no concrete evidence to back our claims. Besides, I don't trust them. Asking for their help is out of the question. What if the Regeneration Palace isn't even involved? We can't afford to take unnecessary risks. Their uncertainty and lack of direction weighed heavily on the group. Chang Hyo turned toward Jaehwan, his expression filled with worry. This situation is far more complicated than we anticipated. What do you think we should do now? All eyes fell on Jaehwan as the room grew silent, awaiting his decision. With the fall of Manticore Fortress and the defeat of 3 major clans, the prospect of advancing with Jaehwan's plan loomed ominously. Many feared it could ignite a full-scale war. However, Jaehwan remained unshaken. In his eyes, confrontation with their enemies was inevitable, and delaying his course of action was not an option. His unwavering resolve left Chang Hyo deeply unsettled. Chang Hyo's mind drifted to a conversation he once had with Prime Minister Jurgen Cheever, who had shared his understanding of Jaehwan's ultimate intentions. The Prime Minister believed that Jaehwan aimed to unify chaos under one rule and eliminate all adversaries. What struck him most was the implication that Jaehwan intended to relinquish his role as Castle Lord afterward. Without enemies to threaten the peace, the position of Castle Lord would become obsolete. Troubled, Chang Hyo voiced his concerns. Are you truly planning to unite chaos? He asked, his tone tinged with unease. That's far more ambitious than simply subjugating the 4 great fortresses and the 10 clans. You'd be challenging the entire Regeneration Palace. The weight of his words hung heavy in the air. The Regeneration Palace wasn't just a powerful entity, it was a force mightier than the combined strength of the 4 great fortresses and the 10 clans. Chang Hyo was certain that Jaehwan, formidable as he was, lacked the strength to take on such a behemoth. There are limits, even for someone like you, Chang Hyo added. Some battles can't be won alone. Jaehwan's response was swift and resolute, his voice steady and unyielding. That's exactly why I have you by my side. The declaration left Chang Hyo momentarily stunned, the weight of Jaehwan's confidence in him sinking in. It was an acknowledgement of trust that caught him off guard and filled him with a mix of astonishment and apprehension. For better or worse, he realized he was an integral part of Jaehwan's grand vision. That's it for today. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe for more. We'll see you in the next one.